we wanted to find the most credible person that we could on this topic, somebody who has credentials that nobody can argue with. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He is a former U.S. Army Ranger. He's a West Point psychology professor. He is the United States of America's #1 trainer of military and law enforcement. He has been doing it now for 15 years. He's on the road training people all around the world about 300 days a year. He's quite dedicated to this. He has 2 books out, and they are legendary books. The first one is on killing. The second one is on combat. They are on the United States Marine Corps Commandant's required reading list. They are also required reading for many military and police academies, I believe the FBI and the DEA, and the country, all across the country for police departments and worldwide. He has spent decades studying and teaching healthy people, military and law enforcement, the people who need to pull the trigger on a gun, how to pull the trigger on a gun. He's the guy who coined the term killology. He has a scholarly attitude, and it's a scholarly endeavor that examines killing and helps those who have to kill overcome their natural resistance to killing. We are all built with that resistance in us, and it's a good thing. So when he sees it being used for profit or gaming, or in Hollywood, he teaches it so he can recognize it. And he's here to tell us exactly what it is, how to spot it, how bad and prevalent it is. This is the real problem. And nobody's really going to do this, special because, oh, this isn't going to make you popular with your friends, and it's certainly not going to make us popular. But it's the truth. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is here. How are you, sir?
Glenn.
Good to see you.
Proud to be on board.
It is, it's an honor to be with you. Almost everybody I know and respect in military or law enforcement holds you out as a living legend.
It's an honor to be a service people.
What I want you to do is, everybody says to me that has seen you before, gone through your training, or one of your lectures, they'll say, you won't believe how bad it is. You have all the facts. So I am a parent, and all the people watching, some of them may say, I don't buy into this Hollywood violence. I grew up with it. I play video games, blah, blah, blah. Convince me.
Yeah. Let me begin by framing this with a personal story. March 1998. I'd retired from the Army. I got a call from my aunt in Florida. Said, my God, is that Joe's school they're talking about? Joe, my baby, my little one, is in middle school in Jonesboro, Arkansas that day. What does my aunt in Florida know about my son's school in Arkansas? What are you talking about? She said, turn on the news. There it was on every channel. Mass murder in the middle school in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Unknown dead. Fleets of ambulance being sent to my son's school. My wife said, you need to go out there. I said, what can I do? She said, you're the nation's expert on PTSD. Go. They need you. I said, yeah, you're right. Find any good man, there's always a better woman, right? My bride of 37 years, my high school sweetheart, she's a good woman, so I went. I'll tell you at the end of the day how it turned out. What I want you to realize is these massacres in our schools, and we discussed this before, we're going to stop calling them shootings. I'm a shooter. You're a shooter. Our listeners are shooters. But we've taken the word shooter and used that word to mean the most vile, horrible mass murders in America. So the word shooter has come to mean horrible mass murderer. The word shooting, I've engaged in many shootings. I've shot many deer. The word shooting, you shoot a deer, it's the same as a Columbine massacre, a Jonesboro massacre. How many people killed in the Boston massacre? 5. How many people killed in the St. Valentine Day massacre? 7. We lost more than twice as many people murdered, children murdered in Sandy Hook, more than twice as many as the Boston massacre, the St. Valentine Day massacre put together. And we call it a shooting, like it happens out of the range every day. These are massacres, and we need to reclaim the word shooter. I'm a shooter, you're a shooter. They are horrible, vile mass murderers. These are not shootings. These are massacres. Call it what it is. Simultaneously, they have taken these horrible crimes and made us think that they're not as bad. Oh, it's just a shooting. And they've taken what we do and turn it into a horrible and vile crime. Don't let them get away with calling our sport a horrible, horrible crime. So these massacres are not normal. The first juvenile mass murder, multiple homicide by a single juvenile on people in their school in human history.
Let me say, a kid shooting another kid in school.
In this case, it was a principal and a custodian. But the first time in human history any juvenile has ever committed a multiple homicide on people in their school was in the late 70s in California, double homicide. In the 80s, we had a couple more double homicides. In the 90s, it began to take off, and now it's out of control. 5,000 years of recorded history, 500 years of gunpowder combat, 150 years of repeating firearms, and not one single time in the history of the world has a single juvenile ever committed a crime like this in their school, and now it's everywhere. Now, what you got to understand is we're doing lockdown drills, and they work. They deter crime, and they reduce the loss of life. Our cops, every cop in America practices going in the school and shooting the kid before the body count gets too high. Jeez. But it is not normal for every kid in America to practice hunker down hiding when the kids come to kill them. Never lose your sense of outrage that every cop in America has to practice going in the school and shooting our kids. This is not business as usual. And in spite of everything that we do, we've got all-time record juvenile dead in our schools. How many kids killed by school fire? In all of North America in the last 50 years, 0. Not one single kid's been killed by school fire in North America in half a century. How many kids killed by school violence? Go to Department of Education, dead by violence in this school. 1998 alone, we had 42 dead. 42 dead in 1998 alone. In 07, we had 63 dead in the schools. How many killed by fire that year? 0. Our children, and you'll never see this, but add up all the figures everywhere else, and you'll agree, our children in the school are more likely to be killed by violence than every other possible cause of death put together. And nobody even talks about it. The only answer is denial until the Sandy Hook comes. And then there's, oh, we'll confiscate all the guns. It ain't going to do no good. We'll talk about that. But this is not normal. And it's a worldwide phenomenon. In Canada, had the Taber, Alberta massacre with 7 dead.
Hang on just a second, because they will make this, they're making this into an American.
Yes, and it's not. In Belgium, the sicko got in a daycare center. Google it, Belgium, daycare center. And he murdered one daycare worker, wounded another. He's dressed as the Joker in the Batman movie. He murders one daycare worker, wounds another, and hacks and stabs 12 little baby in the crib.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, all of their gun laws didn't do them any good when he walked in a daycare center with a butcher knife. In Norway, some of the most stringent gun laws in the world is Norway. That sicko got on the island of Norway and murdered over 60 children. It was a massacre, and there was nobody there that could shoot back. This is a worldwide phenomenon. It's happening around the world. And there's one new factor in the equation: violent visual imagery inflicted upon children. Never lose your sense of outrage that our children have to practice hunker down and hiding. Never let yourself think this is business as usual. So what we need to realize is, let's take the Columbine killer. I was there on the night of the massacre in Jonesboro, my hometown. I was there after Columbine. I was there after Virginia Tech. I was there after that Amish school massacre. But come with me to the library in Columbine High School. All but one of the murders will take place in the library in Columbine High School. The killers, remember, they're not shooters. These vicious mass murderers walk in the library and they execute the first kid. Now, most of the murders were committed with a shotgun, most of them point blank to the head or the face. I ask all my cops, how many of you have seen what a 12-gauge shotgun does to the human head at point-blank range? Anything good about that? But these kids laugh. They laughed. And they committed it again and again and again. What kind of sick, sick animal could splash a kid's brains across the wall, could watch them gurgle and gasp out their last breath, and then do it again and again and again? What kind of sick animal? The kind we're raising every day. From their youngest days, they sat in front of the movie screen. They sat in front of the television, and they watched vivid depictions of human death and suffering. And they snacked and they cheered. Look, it's Pavlov's dog. Everybody remembers old Pavlov. Ring the bell, feed the dog. Ring the bell, feed the dog. In just a week, all you had to do is ring the bell, the dog is salivating. Salivation is autonomic nervous system response. At a gut basic level, to the dog, the bell was the same as food. We have millions of kids at a gut basic level Human death and suffering is the same as their popcorn, their candy bar, their girlfriend's perfume, their soda. And what do when somebody dies in a horrible way on the screen? They cheer and they laugh. They are not just desensitized. They have been taught to associate reward and pleasure with human death and suffering from the youngest days. And then we put them in the video games. Now, we learned in World War II the majority of our soldiers wouldn't shoot. And we learned the way to overcome it was to turn killing into a conditioned response. Anybody in the military in the last 50 years didn't shoot no E-type silhouette or any bullseye target, which you did. You didn't shoot a bullseye target on a known distance range. Your conditioned stimulus of man-shaped silhouette pops up in your field of view. Conditioned response, hit the target, target drops. Stimulus response, stimulus response, stimulus response. We turned killing into a conditioned response. In the 1990s, I was a West Point psych professor. I helped run the rat lab. The dumbest cadet could teach the dumbest rat in an hour. Lights on, press the bar, going to get food. Our kids have been taught hundreds of thousands of times. Blow people's heads off in explosions of blood and you get points. They have been operantly and classically conditioned to associate reward and pleasure with human death and suffering.
Okay, hang on just a second. We're going to take a break. I told you this episode would be a little intense. When we come back, I want you just to spend a second on that and just say, to the people who say, I've played those video games a million times and it's never done that to me. My kids, they know they know better. Address that when we come back.